our guest is Jordi Agramunt from Barcelona. He is political scientist and he's an advisor for international relationships. So, dear Jordi, we know that you are in love with the Baltic states. We know that you have written a book about your traveling experience in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Maybe you could show the cover to our viewers of the book.
Thanks, Tomas and Gintautas, for inviting me. Indeed, I have just published a book. It's in Catalan. It will be in Catalan bookstores in September, but I already have some copies. I hope someday will be in Lithuanian, Latvian, and Estonian. I can tell you already that I'm in contact with some publishers in Lithuanian, Estonia, for getting it translated to Estonian and Lithuanian. I cannot say the names because it's not closed yet, the agreement. I'm still looking for a Latvian publisher. If you're looking this from Latvia, please get in contact with me because we can reach a deal. Mm-hmm. We can talk later about the book if you want. As I said, I'm very happy to be here with you and to be part of your conversation.
Arrufat, sorry, your book is partly devoted to the Baltic Way. Is it right? And you repeat this way, Baltic Way, and you learn and studied. You did research about political and cultural opinions on Baltic Way and independence. How do you think, that's on your own opinion, how was important this Baltic Way in 1989?
Mm-hmm. So my book, it's called, let's start with the beginning, it's called in Catalan La Via Baltica, which means the Baltic Way. And the subtitle is El somni d'Estonia, Letònia, Lituania, de viure l'Europa democràtica, which in English means Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania's dream of being part of democratic Europe. So what did I try to explain? This is a book mostly written for Catalan audiences, right? From a Catalan who has traveled extensively in the 3 Baltic states and who has made plenty of interviews and who has made plenty of documentary research. So what I try to explain is that the Baltic Way happened because there was a collective will in 1989 to make these things possible, even if there was a risk for their lives, even if there was a risk for these people being sent to Siberia, even if they didn't know what would be the outcome. All the people together decided we are going to do that, right? Many of the people I interviewed, many other people I met and later told me this collective will no longer exists. Maybe you can see that in some public figures talking, yes, we are a collective nation, but this is mostly gone. I don't think so much, at least seen from the perspective of Southern Europe. That collective will is clearly seen in Lithuania, at least in those days with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And what I try to say is that that collective will made possible the Baltic Way and made possible, not as important, all what happened afterwards. The January 91 events in Riga and Vilnius, and also standing, even if no one wanted to recognize Lithuanian independence back, the people decided to hold their country until the miracle happened in August and September 1991, as everybody knows, with the failed coup d'etat in Moscow.
Jordi, and this I would like to continue this my question and our talking, and my question is related. You mentioned the will, the will to freedom, but my question is about readiness to sacrifice for the freedom. We see different countries, not only Baltic, but as well Ukrainian and Belarus and Russia and all Europe countries, and we see as well that the different countries have different readiness to sacrifice, not only will, but as well readiness to sacrifice. How could you comment this readiness to sacrifice? How it's important from political point of view, because politics, it's not only about, administrative power, but is as well about how the people are ready to sacrifice for some goals.
Well, talking from someone who is from Southern Europe, I can say that for sure that readiness to sacrifice for political will, I don't think it's clearly seen in our societies in these days. I have collected some data. I can present you later about what the Spain or the Spanish society thinks about the Russian aggression to Ukraine, and we can find some interesting data. This will to sacrifice, in my opinion, it's not clearly seen in neither the political class nor in the society. I'm always talking about Catalonia and Spain, right? Here, and just for you to remember, Spain hasn't been invaded by a foreign country since for 2,000 years, when the French Napoleon invaded Spain. We have had our own civil wars, but we haven't had any foreign invasion, with the exception maybe of the American invasion of Cuba, which led to the Cuban independence in 1998. So in this sense, we are a very peaceful society, which doesn't want to get any kind of trouble, which is always commenting on political issues, but which we hardly get, we try not by all means to get troubles caused by political issues. That's how I see these things. I don't want to risk to comment on other countries in Europe.
I see. And since we touched this sacrifice issue, and you mentioned the war in Ukraine, what is the diplomacy from the government of Spain towards Russia as the aggressor, occupant of Ukraine, including all the crimes committed by Russian soldiers in Bucha and Mariupol and other places. On the other hand, is it any different from Catalonian attitude and Catalonian diplomacy? Having in mind that Spain has political prisoners itself and has in the past flirted somewhat with Russian military projects, allowing Russian military ships to have access to Spain's ports. What is the balance now? What is the dynamics?
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting question. I will try to answer all of the topics you have shown, because there are plenty of topics that you have to explain. As you said, from 2014 to 2016, when Crimea had already been invaded, Spain collaborated with Russia, providing supplies to Russian ships going to Syria from the port of Ceuta, with the excuse that as Ceuta is a Northern African enclave which doesn't belong to NATO, Spain wasn't committed to NATO in that sense, so that Spain could supply to Russia. It was in 2016 that Spanish foreign policy completely changed, made a 180-degree turn, and they decided to stop the collaboration with Russia, and at the same time to send all the troops and all the artillery to Latvia in Adasi, and the collaboration with the Baltic States, also with the planes in Cholet and in Estonia. That's something that was an incredible 180 turns. No one knows the real reason why they took this decision. That could be preferably a state secret for the next 50 years or even more. So that's the position. The position of Spain right now is that whatever decision NATO takes, we are part of NATO, we are part of the European Union, and we are committed to our commandments. They do not have a clearly position standing out in the sense that we are neither France, but nor Hungary. I mean, France says we have to work in a common European defense policy. You won't hear Spanish politicians nowadays saying this, but we are not also, outsiders like Hungary or way. So mostly we are doing the foreign policy of Spain is very much aligned with the United States these days, as the political leadership of Spain is very much aligned with the Biden administration. The same could not be said until now with Trump, right? And so, and let me here just remark a very important point which happened in the last 24 hours, which is not related to Ukraine or Russia, but it's related to NATO and Spain. As you might know, there are some incidents right now in the border between Kosovo and Serbia.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, right. So some days before, the Spanish Prime Minister, he's at the moment touring the Balkans, right? He met with the Prime Minister of Serbia, and he said, Spain will be committed to Serbia in finding a solution for Kosovo. So my question is, so where is Spain at the moment? Is Spain with Serbia or is Spain with NATO? Because for Ukraine and Russia, it's clear human rights aggression and a breaking of international law. There is no discussion here for the Spanish diplomacy. But in relation to Kosovo and NATO, where are we? That's something that I can't hardly see where we are. Because for Spain, it's clear that Kosovo is an unilateral declaration of independence, something Spain never wants to recognize because that could create a precedent for Catalonia, the Basque Country, or whatever in Spain. But at the same time, the official discourse of Spain is we are a member of NATO and we are doing whatever NATO tells us to do. So let's cross the fingers that nothing serious is going to happen in the Balkans because no one knows what's going to happen there, right? And as for the internal crisis, we can talk about later. When we're talking about internal crisis, I mean, of course, Catalonia. Spain clearly knows how to differentiate the foreign message, the message for public audiences, with what they're doing inside, right? And at the moment, there are no politicians in prison, but they could be sent to prison because one thing is the official discourse of the Spanish government, the politicians. They say that we are dialoguing with the Catalans, we are trying to find a solution. We have given a pardon to those politicians who are in prison. But at the same time, we have a judicial elite, the judicial leaders, the courts, the judges, who have a very clear agenda, going completely in the separate way of Spain. And they will do their best to put them back to prison if they can, because the public prosecutor has been always asking that they should be sent back to prison. And at the same time, there are many more other politicians, journalists, public figures, even academics that are being prosecuted for what they did in October 2017, even in our days, even in 2022. So the Spain is very good at that. We have we are the good boys in the foreign policy, but what happens inside, we are dialoguing. Yeah, the government is dialoguing. That's true. But the other elites, not so much. You see?
Yeah. I think that Kosovo, I don't like to defend Kosovo, because, maybe their government did too radical, too quick solutions on the borderline between Kosovo and Serb Republic. However, it was very wonderful that we found that Spain, in some one way, is linked to support Serbs who are in collaboration with Putin, and indirect, and because Serbska propaganda completely support and retranslate Russians propaganda in their broadcasting, in this one situation was very wonderful, that instead to demand some kind of negotiations between Kosovo and Srpska Republic, to show some sympathies, for Serbs' position, This one was not completely clear. Does it mean that there is some kind of hidden sympathies for Putin regime between government of Spain?
No, I don't want to think so. I don't think that there can be some kind of sympathy for Putin regime. As I said, in Spain, you have to clearly differentiate between the government, the political elites ruling Spain now, and all the other leaders of the state, which, for instance, the militaries, the police, the judges. They may have some kind of sympathy in the sense that they do whatever it takes to preserve the unity of a state. Does it mean that they support Putin? No, I'm not saying so. I'm saying that they support doing whatever it takes, right? Is there anyone supporting Putin in Spain at the moment? I want to be clear. If there is someone supporting Putin in Spain, it's a very small minority. It's a very small minority. Do not forget that Spain was a dictatorship until 1975, and the main opposition to dictatorship was the Communist Party. And the Communist Party, those who still vote for the Communist Party or the leftist party, which was born after the Communist Party, which is the Podemos, which is part of the Spanish government now, they are, let's say, they are for finding a diplomatic solution to this crisis as soon as possible. They don't want to talk about sending weapons to Ukraine. They don't want to talk about being committed to the war or to NATO. They are very uncomfortable with that. Those guys are part of the Spanish government. And does it mean that they are putting supporters? No, I'm not saying so. We don't have a case. We don't have these kind of things in Spain. For good or for worse, we are on the other side of the map of Europe. That gives some good points and some weak points. And the good points is that we are very far from the direct sphere of influence of Putin or the Serbs or the Lukashenko or similar leaders. And that's the reality. I want to be clear on that.
What is the feeling in Catalonia, in Barcelona, where you are? Is the war in Ukraine somewhere outside of Europe, or is it in Europe? Because for us in Lithuania, and as I know, you spent summers in Lithuania as well. In Lithuania, our feeling is that it's right here in our neighborhood, that Ukraine defending itself is also defending the east frontier of European Union and NATO. So for us, it's right here, and we are ready for military conflict with Russia at any time. Just like Israel is always on the somewhere on the hill of a volcano. But what is the feeling in Catalonia? Is it somewhere a little bit outside, not really in Europe?
The thing is that, in my opinion, the commitment, of course, the commitment you see in the Baltic States or Poland is you don't find it west of Berlin. It's another story, right? So I personally went to the first demonstration which happened in the streets of Barcelona against the Russian aggression, and I can easily say that 90%, 95% of the attendants of that demonstration were Ukrainians living in Barcelona. There were very, very, very few locals supporting those demonstrations. And does it mean that the people see that as the Ukrainians are not part of Europe? I don't think so. It's just that they don't know. It's just that as you don't know, you don't take a position easily. What does it mean? Does it mean that people is not concerned about that? In Catalonia, as in the rest of Spain, in the sense we are similar to the rest of Spain, there is a very different answer. If you ask, do we have to send weapons? You will find the society divided in this issue. Two, are you ready to welcome refugees? And I can happily say that Catalonia is among the top regions in Europe willing to welcome refugees. We have a long experience on that. We have been welcoming refugees, for instance, from the Balkan Wars. I remember myself when I was a teenager in the 90s. My class, there were 2 or 3 students from Bosnia, and we have the experience on that, and we are always very well connected to welcome refugees, and we are happy with that. Do we feel at ease getting involved on this kind of conflicts with weapons? This is something out of topic there. It's not because we don't see that as an aggression. It's not because I think the society doesn't feel comfortable talking about weapons. To make it short, do not expect Catalonia collecting 5 million euros for a Bayraktar like Lithuania did some weeks ago.
Yeah, my question is similar to Tomas. It's about EU position and the position of Baltic countries and Poland from one side in EU, and such countries like Spain in others from the other side. Do you see some dangers for the break of EU? Because, so different positions on the Polish-Ukrainian case, different positions on Ukrainian case and Russian case, on the case of sanctions against Russia, some countries would like to find political, solutions, some negotiations with this dictator Putin and Lukashenko and so on. And from the other side, the other countries like Baltic countries, Poland, partly Nordic countries, they are, fight for the even stronger sanctions, and even stronger military opposition to Russia, That's it means that two-speed EU, one from one side, one slow speed of Western and very Western Europe, and until Spain and Portuguese. And from the other side, many of countries, even Romania, are more and more involved into the conflict because we're sending, we donate our money, we are ready to, to share with Ukraine some economical solutions, to help them with transportation of grains and so on. Do you see the conflict inside of EU because of this two-speed Europe?
In my opinion, everything can be solved diplomatically. The European Council Union is famous for its long nights of trying to reach a solution or through negotiation. So negotiations can be always found. Solutions can always be found through negotiations. It may take longer or shorter, but it will work. The architectural institution, the institutional architecture of the European Union is the one we have. We cannot change it from day to night. We have to move on with that. It's true that the position of Sweden or the Poland or the Baltic States is not the same position than France or Belgium. We know that. As I said, Spain will always side in case of doubt with Germany and France, and same Portugal. And I mean, my concern these days is not so much about those two views you have mentioned. My concern those days have two names. These two names are Hungary. This is not something new, and more worrying, Italy. What's going to happen in October in Italy? It's something no one has the answer now. No, I mean, Hungary can block can veto decisions. That's true. That will be hard. It will be hard to find a solution bypassing Hungary. But if you move to Italy, that's something bigger. Just imagine that for a moment we have a neo-fascist running Italy. This could happen. Neo-fascist that has been whose supporters clearly are skeptical about aggression in Ukraine, and that she could need that lady. She could need the support of the Lega Nord, the Northern League of Italy. But that we know that Matteo Salvini is a friend of Putin, and he's a clear friend of Putin. This is something we don't have in Spain. So he's clearly. And I mean that could put a big problem in Europe, and that's something that I hope
he's in coalition with Le Pen, isn't he?
No, I mean in Europe, yes, he's in coalition with Le Pen and with Orban. That the problem is that he has taken a picture of himself with a picture of Putin in his T-shirt. I don't remember if it was in Moscow or in the European Parliament. But this is a real problem. I hope someone is working on that scenario in Brussels, because it may happen. It could be happen.
This is quite dangerous, and I would remember there's a project of Boris Johnson, to build another Europe. It's from the first point, it looked like a completely utopia or crazy idea to build from Great Britain, Nordic countries, Baltic countries, Poland, maybe Romania as well. And even to try to negotiate with Turkey, that there's a political project which could resist or to oppose the EU. Actually, I didn't hear that somebody in EU support Boris Johnson and his crazy idea. But Poland in one time, the President Duda responds to Hungary, that Poland could block all the relations with, some countries and as well with Poland, because Orban's position, on Ukraine conflict, because for Poland, it's like internal conflict, they consider this war in Ukraine as pre-war in Poland, So it's so important. And if Hungary supports even not directly, I don't like to say that directly. It's not direct. Orban never support directly Putin. It's some diplomatic way he found. But I would say that my question is even, what's your prognosis? How EU would solve these problems, this conflict, internal conflict in, EU, how it will be managed, all these so dangerous processes which is going in EU, if Great Britain will insist on the project of, Boris Johnson, in the case if Italy, will turn to fascist side, neo-fascist side. What's your opinion?
Well,
This is
yeah, that's you are asking me for a level of details that to be honest, I have ever thought about that, because this is a nasty scenario that is being created very, very fast and quickly, and that's something that we could not imagine at the beginning of the year, that something like that could happen. Somehow it seems like that Putin knows that very well, the weaknesses of Europe, and he's playing the cards very well. What to do with Italy if Italy turns neo-fascist? It's something that it's hardly to it's hardly, so it's very difficult, something that we can find a solution easily. It's a sovereign state. You cannot play with them. You can play, for instance, I don't know, the card of no cooperation with them, but we need to work. I'm not sure that. You have to find the incentives somehow. My only hope is that all those far right parties, when they have a discourse when they are outside the power, and they soften the tone when they are inside the power. That's the only hope I have. But we have to see what happens then, right? Because even with the Trump administration, Trump had a discourse, but he had plenty of people in the team, which was easy to talk with them, right? So I don't want to give more forecasts about what might happen, because there are many variables that may happen from now to October, and Italy is a country very, very hard to predict. It's with all difficult dynamic of parties and multitude of parties that they are there, with difference between north or south. So.
Yeah. Dear Jordi, may I ask you how in Catalonia and in Southern Europe is perceived war crime committed by Russian soldiers in Ukraine? Is it really in the political discourse? To what extent people are aware of the level of inhumanity? Last week we had on our program, me and Professor Gintautas, we had a conversation on our program with Denis Hanovs from Riga. He's a culturologist, and he said that for Latvian Russians who feel deep nostalgia for the Soviet Union, you could tell them about 20 butchers. You can double all the crime that is already committed in Ukraine. It would not help them to understand that they should be on the Ukrainian side, not on the Russian side. It's too difficult for them to understand that Russia has become a fascist country, because it used to be so obvious that Russia is a victim of Nazi Hitler's Germany fascism. Now it's upside down. So he said that there's some kind of Freudian denial, inability for cultural shift. and new identity. So to what extent the Catalonians and Spanish people at large in Southern Europe see war crimes? It's not just a war, but direct inhumane actions on purpose. Civilians standing in a queue for bread, suddenly they're just shot for fun by Russian soldiers. Is it really in the media, in the awareness of Catalonians in Spain?
Okay, so you have mentioned the key word at the end of your question, the media. I'm afraid to say that that topic, I mean, my main source of information to know what happens in Ukraine these days is not the media, but it's rather Twitter, right? Because on Twitter, following the specific people, I know I can have that information, but I don't find the media. Does it mean that the media doesn't cover, the Spanish and Catalan media doesn't cover what happens in Ukraine? No, it doesn't mean so. It means that it might happen in the second or the third page of the journal, but not in the cover, not in the front lines, right? Other topics are in the front lines. In February and March, everybody was talking about that, but somehow this is no longer in the headlines of the media, right? Does it mean that we ignore what's happening? No, we are not ignoring, but it's just that it's not topic of conversation of over every days. Why? Basically because it's so far away. Basically because we have our own conflicts with human rights in our external borders. I think it was in last June, I think 20 candidates to illegal immigration died trying to cross the border from Africa to Spain in Melilla. That was the main event. I remember that week because disasters and human rights aggression were happening in Ukraine, but everybody was ignoring that because everybody was focused on what happened in the border with Morocco, with those poor people who were killed. No one knows how, no one knows why or by whom, trying to get into Europe. And for instance, it's sad to say so, but the related topics to the war that are more focused on the media right now are how it's going to happen at the energy level in Spain. Even though we are the most prepared country in Western Europe to support the closure of the gas connections. First, because even if we are not in good terms with Algeria, we have a direct connection with Algeria for the gas. And we have 5 plants of gasification, 5 plants in Spain. That's much more than France or even than Germany. It means that we can take all the gas from the United States we want, and we can transform it to gas, and we have the need served. But people keeps talking about that, about the economic consequences of the inflation, for instance. Human rights, it may happen from once to once, but it's not the topic. Having said that, I'm very happy to say that our foreign minister, Catalan foreign minister, Mrs. Victoria Alsina, she has clearly stood in favor of Ukraine. She has clearly stood in favor of supporting Ukraine and sending weapons to Ukraine. She has said that Ukraine is an example because it gives inspiration. And she said so in the Parliament of Catalonia. And this is something that I can hardly imagine any other Catalan foreign minister saying so clearly.
It's an example for patriotism?
Example, yeah, for patriotism and for morally, for humanity, for the values they transmit, for resisting to invasion, even through in a difficult. I'm not sure about 100% of the words I'm saying, but it was much more or less what I'm saying. I remember that everybody was discussing this in the Catalan media for the following days because this is not the usual discourse you find in Southern Europe. In Southern Europe, you might find, yeah, let's support those poor refugees, let's support them by sending money, but discourse about patriotism, about let's support these people, they deserve all admiration. That's what she said, admiration. For me, it was like listening to a Polish politician rather than a Catalan politician when I heard that discourse. It's just that, let's be clear, we are a sub-state entity, so our resources and our power are limited. And even Spain, not moving from Catalonia to Spain, even Spain has a problem here. And no one says so, but we have to say this. When everybody says that every country in the NATO has to devote 2% of the GDP to defense and military spending, Spain devotes only 1%, which means that it's the country in NATO, what I think is the last one, which devotes less money. Even Portugal devotes much more share of their GDP to defense than Spain. So even if the Spanish Prime Minister might say that we want to support Ukraine, our resources are so limited. In June, the Ukrainians regretted that Spain promised to send heavy artillery to Ukraine, but only guns and protective uniforms had been sent and nothing else. Because and in my opinion, this is because we are so poorly funded in the military terms. And why Spain is in such a deplorable position in defense? Well, I have my opinion. I can say it if you want. It's because maybe it's because of our difficult relation in history with the military, right? Because the military didn't support democracy in Spain like it happened in Portugal, where the militaries made a coup for democracy. The militaries were supporting dictatorship until the end, and so even conservative governments in Spain have been not very happy about increasing the money for the military. May this happen? May this change now with the new commandments? We will see. This is what they said, but we have to see that.
Yeah, Jordi, I would like to, because you mentioned many times of dictatorship in Spain, Franco regime, but my question will be from the earlier time, from civil war, in Spain. And because many of European countries, as well Lithuania, even Lithuanians, they feel empathy for Republicans of Spain, and many of voluntaries, military voluntaries, went from Lithuania to Spain to fight for a republic. So it doesn't mean that if this long distance between, countries like Russia, Soviet Russia in this time, independent Lithuania and Spain, it was not, obstacle, to not to travel, to support, not to support, and even in our time, in geopolitical period, with this media, it's much more easy to feel empathy than in civil war period, when many of people, even from United States, we went to Spain. And my question is that about discourses, of Ukraine in public area, in publicity of Spain. Does somebody remember or try to remember about civil war and international brigades, and so on, or it's like, forgotten topic, it's not touchable? I remember that even Barcelona was one of the center of the civil war,
To be honest, when that happened in February 24, I was saying to everybody, this is exactly the same that happened with the civil war in Spain. The difference is that the civil war was a civil war, and this is an aggression from one sovereign country to another sovereign country. We cannot leave them alone, just like the Republic of Spain was left alone, and the Nazis, they were supported by the Nazis, took over power. They cannot be left alone. I'm afraid that no one mentioned that. I remember that at what time there was the presidential campaign in France, and the leader of the Green Party in France said exactly the same thing you said. We cannot left Ukraine alone the same way we left Spain alone in 1936. Yeah, Yadot. His name is Yadot. Is your name? But remember, he said that guy has a point. It's exactly the same. I mean, if we left them alone, then Russia will take over Ukraine, and what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? Well, going to happen to Moldova, or which going straight into NATO territory, the Baltics and Poland, and I don't see there's a problem here. There's a problem because, as you know, the Franco's coup was against a democratic republic. But as the Democratic Republic was left alone by UK and France, what happened then is that we knocked at the wrong door. We knocked at the door of Stalin. and Stalin and Mexico were the only ones that helped the Spanish Republic. And what means is that 1 year later, the Communist Party took over the government of the Spanish Republic. So at the age of the war, we were seen as communists, not as a democracy. And that means that for some people, it's hard to make these kind of comparisons. For me, I want to focus on July 36, where we were in July 36. We were not a communist country. We were a democracy. It's just that as we were left alone, we had to look for other sources. So that's why comparisons are always not happy. Are always not easy to make between.
It's not easy. Yeah. I accept your arguments. Tommy?
So perhaps we can move now to Northern Europe, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. We don't feel in Lithuania as a Northern Europeans, but I know from Erasmus students who come to Lithuania, they identify our region as a Northern European country, but it's not our feeling. For us, Northern Europe is Iceland, Norway, Finland. But what is your perception of the Baltic states region-wise? And more importantly, I would like to hear from you about your experience working by foot from Tallinn to Riga, Vilnius, to repeat Baltic Way in 1989, that Latvians, Estonians, Lithuanians holding hands for 600 kilometers commemorated Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact in 1939. So you walked by foot, people passing by cars were beeping to you, you were holding Catalonian and I believe European Union flags. So maybe you could share your experience. Some people met you at the border from Latvia to Lithuania.
Yes, well, listen, yeah, it's true that near Riga, I was walking with a flag of Latvia, and near Vilnius with a flag of Lithuania, and somewhere in the north of Lithuania, I was walking with a Catalan flag. Yeah, it's true that some people beeped at me when I was speaking. And when I was walking with no flag, no one paid attention to me. But when you walk with a flag, you obviously pay. You catch there's a lot of attention to you, right?
So if no flag, maybe you are just walking to a shop or something, just a local.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, anybody beeped at me with a car, but no one stopped it to talk to me. And I mean, I don't pay attention to this, right? I just wanted to do so as a sign of gratitude when I was walking. And but so when I was on the Baltic Way, I didn't know what I was going to do with that. I took a lot of pictures, I went a lot of interviews, I took a lot of notes, but then of course I had to complement with further documentary research. And the support for the European Union, because I understand the question was about the European Union and the Baltic states. The support for the European Union in the Baltic states is much higher than you think. It's higher than in Italy, right? That means something. Italy is in a very, very bad position at the moment. Everything can happen there. But everybody, I mean, even if you have your Eurosceptical voices, the debate here with the data. I don't follow, of course, the media, but I just have a look at what the polls say. Support for European Union is no lower than in other parts of Europe. The question is different when you ask, do you feel that the European Union has an impact on your life? Then the support is lower, right? People don't see where is the support, what the European Union means for their lives. The question, I mean, and that I move from the quantitative to the qualitative data. The question was very different when I asked about the European Union in border areas. I mean, in Karsinu, Estonia, in Rujena, Latvia, in Bauska, Latvia, in Pasvalys and Panevėžys, Lithuania. Everybody said, yes, the European Union has been very good for us as a border region. Everybody identifies the European Union as a good source of income for the region, lied to specific transborder projects. I mean, if the European Union makes an effort to communicate what they're doing, people does see and they recognize this. The answers were more vague, more imprecise when asking this question in Riga or in Vilnius or other places more far away from the borders. I especially remember an answer I got from the leader of the gay league in Lithuania, Mr. Vladimir Simonko, which he told me the European Union is for me the guarantee of my rights. That he was so clear. I mean, no one else had given me such a precise answer anywhere else in the Baltic states. And moving from the values and the data to more travel-related observations I made, one Estonian told me, pay attention to when you walk in the Baltic Way, because we have everybody, everywhere in the Estonia, of course he knew about Estonia, not about Latvia and Lithuania. We have manors everywhere. The varas in Lithuanian, muizas in Latvian, I don't remember in Estonian. Those manors were built by former Baltic German owners, and that's the heritage, our former European heritage left it here. That's the proof that we were part of Europe, not part of the East, not part of Russia in the past. Because even if we were not in good terms with them, somehow they were our owners at the time. So that's the proof that this land belonged to German-speaking Europe, to the Central European countries. And even another thing that a lot of people don't realize, your singing, your chorus singing in the three Baltic republics, that's also an heritage that comes from Central Europe, because the people in Germany, in Austria, and those kind of places, in Denmark, they used to gather together in churches to sing in chorus. It's just that you move it that from the churches to big open air scenarios, and you make it great. It's just, if you allow me to make the comparison, it's like when they talk about soccer, right? They say the English invented it, but the Brazilians put the magic. So you made the same with the core music. The Germans invented it, but the Baltics put the magic, right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right about this heritage, because you do these singing festivals of chorus was very similar to Switzerland, Austrian, and German tradition. From these manners or country estates are similar from the one side to German, Sweden tradition, from the other side to, I would say, to Polish, great Grand Duchy of Lithuania and this Polish tradition. It means that there is some, features. I agree about you that what you are talking about, European traditions, but all these features you feel when you are here, But when you are outside of Baltic countries and far away from Baltic countries, that Baltic countries probably are considered as some kind post-Russia countries or some similar way. Could you explain the general opinion about Baltic countries in Spain and Catalonia?
Well, there's no opinion, to be honest. It's nothing. It's neither that we are negative nor positive. It's just that, to start with, people doesn't know the difference between Baltics and Balkans. So I started. Yeah, that's sad. That's sad, but true, right? Um, it's the same when someone here in Northern Europe asks if Portugal is part of Spain or whatever. I mean, I'm sure Portuguese are not happy about that, but it's the reality. And I mean, Europe has been built with from Brussels, but there is no common European and shared identity, especially since 2004, when Baltics, Poland, Czechs, and Slovaks joined the European Union. Everything became so big. It was already difficult for people in Spain to get to know what's happening in Denmark or Greece. Just imagine now to the Baltic states, and that's difficult. Uh, the good news, and I'm talking not only about Catalonia here, is that because of your Baltic Way, there is so much enthusiasm about the Baltic states in Catalonia. It's just that at the same time, there is so much people doesn't know, right? Even if people is enthusiastic about the Baltic states, they don't know that Riga is the capital of Latvia or basic things like that. Or they don't know that Lithuania is a Catholic country and Estonia is an agnostic country, because they think that they are Lutherans, but most of people say that they are agnostic, they don't have any faith, and
Just
this
like in
kind of
Sweden.
thing.
In Sweden,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it's Czech Republic that are as agnostic as the Paul said the Czechs and the Estonians are the more, I don't know if agnostic or atheistic in Europe. And those kind of details that people doesn't know. Why? Well, because no one has paid attention to send TV journalist correspondents to this area. I mean, most of TV change, they send their correspondents to Berlin, and if they need to cover the Baltics, they send it from Berlin to Vilnius. But what do you know from Vilnius when you are in Berlin? Nothing. I mean, you have to be on the ground to know what the reality. I mean, and so what I try to, my little contribution with this book is to help Catalans to get better information about the Baltic states. So to be better informed and to find more information by themselves. And that's the reality, the sad reality of the Europe of our days. When we talk about Europe, we know what Brussels, we know what Paris, Berlin, and little else, because this is where main sources of information are. And yeah, in that sense, Tomas, you mentioned the Erasmus program. The Erasmus program is making a good, good help for making Europe more stable for me. And I talk as a former Erasmus to Paris, France, in that case, right?
Yeah, I was thinking that during the entire hour conversation today, you were talking from Barcelona, but now it just crossed my mind, perhaps you are in Lithuania.
Yeah, that's true. I'm in Pasvalio Regionas at the moment.
In Pasvalio Rajonas,
Exactly.
Pasvalys district. Those English listeners who do not know what is Pasvalys district, it is closer to Latvian border. It's northern Lithuanian part.
Where they say they make the best beer in Lithuania. Something that
I would comment, that Pasvalys is one of the capital of Lithuanian beer. And why I would like to emphasize it, because I am a little bit anarchist, and anarchists always support so-called non-imperial beer, and because Pasvalys beer is not imperial, local, so we are very supporting them.
But the side effects of Pasvalys beer are very, very seductive, very demonistic.
Okay, I will pay attention to that.
Be careful with the seduction of the taste.
I'm not a beer person, but I always make a sip when I buy the someone. But we'll pay more attention now.
Thank you very much for your energy and sharing this cross-regional European, pan-European insights. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you in Kaunas soon, in person, and hopefully we will repeat such a conversation a year later.
You're very welcome, and thank you very much for inviting me and for the pleasant conversation.
Thank you, Jordi.